Why is it that so many pediatricians seem to kind of brush off picky eating? Why is it that they say things like, all kids are picky, sugar out of it? Well, it's not really the pediatrician's fault. The fault lies in the medical education that they receive, in the medical education they receive. So I want you to consider this first in terms of nutrition and nutrition education in medical school. The Journal of Biomedical Education reported that it's recommended to medical schools in the United States that all doctors get 25 hours of nutrition education. Makes sense to me, right? I mean, aren't we going to prevent a lot of diseases just by making sure that families understand about good, sound, joyful nutrition? Yet, 20% of US medical schools, they don't even offer, or 20% offer that many hours. So 80% don't even offer that many hours, despite the recommendation. A 2016 study in the International Journal of Adolescent Medicine and Health assessed the basic nutritional knowledge of the fourth year medical student that was entering the pediatric residency program. Okay, they gave them all a nutritional test as they were entering the program. Half of them failed. Half of them failed. How the heck does nutrition education draw such a short straw in the medical education community? Well, US News and World Report quoted Marion Nestle. I'm a huge fan of her. She's a professor of nutrition at NYU. I'm sure you've seen her in all the big media. She's often quoted in the New York Times, etc. She really knows her stuff. She's got multiple books on the topic. And she stated that one of the issues is a lack of funding and a shortage of trained faculty to teach these doctors. And there's more of a focus on treating rather than preventing diseases, which I think we all know. And that's something we've got to change. She said that the assumption is that the doctors will just refer patients to nutritionists. And you know what? I love a good nutritionist. I love a good registered dietitian, but they are a very specific part of a feeding evaluation. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to a place where the pediatrician says, wow, I can see that you're really stressed. Let's make sure there's nothing physiological going on. Maybe there's some motor skills that I'm not going to detect as a pediatrician. I'm not a speech language pathologist. I'm not an occupational therapist, right? And that they'll take that attitude and say, let's get your child a feeding evaluation. Because at the very least, those experts as part of that team can send you home with specific ideas on how to get on the path to adventurous eating. So when parents report to me that their pediatrician just kind of brushed them off, those are often the parents that end up on my caseload 4 or 5 years later. Over half of my caseload right now in Colorado are kids in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And they were all reported to be very picky eaters. The parents asked for help repeatedly, and they were always just brushed off by their well-meaning pediatrician because he or she just didn't know what they didn't know. Well, how are we going to help those pediatricians learn more and understand that 1 out of 4 kids who are typically developing will develop a feeding disorder? So why are we waiting to see when 25% of the kids are going to need years of feeding therapy? Why are we doing that? It makes no sense to me. Let's talk about what pediatricians are. Pediatricians are professionals that love kids. They go through so many years of medical school to help these families. My brother's a pediatrician. My dearest friend, Dr. Namali Fernando, Dr. Young, obviously is a pediatrician. So I get a lot of the inside scoop from them. And, they work in a really maddening system where I know pediatricians who have to see 60 kids a day just to keep the doors open at their practice. It sounds like they make a lot of money. They don't make that much money, you guys. They've got a really tough job, and they do it because they love children. So let's see if we can't come together and help them to learn more about the red flags of feeding disorders so that these kids get help early on and don't end up on my caseload in middle school. Here's what we're going to do. Professionals, what I'm asking you to do is print off any of the articles on my blog. There's 150 or so, probably more, articles on there. Many are for the American Speech Language Hearing Association, various types of media, CNN, New York Times, Huffington Post, etc., that gives very specific advice about what to look for if a child might have the red flags for a feeding disorder, or just to talk about more extreme picky eating, or just garden variety picky eating, and why we don't want to wait to give those children a little boost in skills. Just attach a little note to it, maybe include a nice big beautiful apple. They're so gorgeous this time of year, and drop it off at their office. It really takes 5 minutes. I keep a stack of these in my car, and I'll just run into an office, swing into the front desk, drop off that article and an apple, and say with a little note on there, hey, I thought you'd find this interesting. I know I did. Pediatricians really appreciate quick, easy to read articles that you provide because they want to know this information. I'm going to tell you why. When Dr. Yum and I go to the American Academy of Pediatrics National Conference every year, we do a book signing, and we provide free books, over 100 free books to pediatricians. Now, a pediatrician can afford a book off Amazon, right? But they don't just click and have it delivered to their house. They stand in line for a really long time. I mean, like an hour, not to necessarily to get the book, but to stand in line and talk to Dr. Yum about what they can do to help these kids. She has now developed such a following among the pediatricians. They're looking to her for advice and for the education that they didn't get in the first place. And they're recognizing the fact that OTs, SLPs also get additional education in feeding. Many of us pay for it ourselves. It's very expensive to any of the parents who are watching out there, but it's because we love kids and we love food and we love family. So I want you to know, I know for sure that the pediatricians really want to help these kids. They just aren't sure how to go about it because they never got that initial education. So let's give it to them. Parents, what can you do? Well, parents, honestly, the best thing you can do is pick up your favorite book about pediatric feeding, about feeding children. I am hoping that it's Raising a Healthy, Happy Eater right behind me, written with Dr. Yum, and give it to your pediatrician for the holidays, or better yet, drop it off this week to the entire staff with a little note saying, thanks for taking such good care of my kids. And they'll put it on their staff library or in the waiting room, and they'll start reading it because you dropped it off. And it's such a lovely gesture. That's the way we can get them thinking and open up the dialogue for not waiting to help these kids, not waiting for kids to grow out of it. So thanks for not blaming the pediatrician. You know, they have a tough job, and we can find ways to educate them and help them and work together so we can help these kids learn to love healthy food.